Hey everyone, welcome back to the Chinese Medicine Podcast. This is part 2 of stress and things you can do to help stop stress in Chinese medicine. This part is specifically about how Chinese medicine views stress and why those things we talked about in part 1 actually work. So those things are exercise, the pressing of gallbladder 25, the acupressure around that area, gallbladder 21, so basically acupressure on the gallbladder channel, activating that, the various exercises I gave you, those kinds of things with the walking, opening this area of your chest area up, lifestyle things like finding something you enjoy doing and doing that thing, using your creativity. So they're the things we want to talk about. Why do those things work? What's the mechanism behind that? So when stress happens to us in Chinese medicine, the way of thinking about what happens is there's definitely a blockage. Now, a lot of people will say that they sense that a blockage is there. Like, even if they don't know anything about Chinese medicine, or people that are aware of their body or kind of have an awareness, of more than the stock standard awareness, I guess, or they might even use that term. I feel a block. I feel blocked. Because in order to have health, there needs to be a flow. Much of how we understand our body in Chinese medicine relates to how we understand nature. And nature kind of teaches us that rivers and water is really terrible and stagnant and disgusting if it's not flowing. Like, water never does well by itself, sitting there, exposed to the air, without any movement or topping up, if it's just kind of sat there, and especially if it's at the mercy of the sun, it's going to go rotten, right? It's the flow and the storage of that water. So water can be stored in wells and things, but it's generally dark and it's deep, and there's a reason why it's not exposed to the light. So if you've just got a big pool of water, it'll be okay for a certain amount of time, but after a while it'll become stagnant. And that's kind of what happens in our body. Like a person who's in the flow, who doesn't have any pre-existing qi stagnation, could face a very stressful situation and they're going to feel annoyed from it, but they're not going to blow out and go crazy and have all physical symptoms or get massive headaches or stuff like that necessarily. Or they're less likely to have that happen. Or they could maybe might have more resilience to stress than someone who already is stuck and blocked. And you kind of can see this in life where some people who are stuck and blocked already, one little tiny thing happens and you think, wow, that response wasn't really warranted for that. Like, you responded very exuberantly to something that was very minor. And that's often got to do with that pre-existing thing that's going on. Like, that person's already unwell. And it's a good thing if you work in customer service or you work around people and you do notice this, that's something that's a small thing can be the trigger. Like, let's say you go to a place, like the other day I had to go get my license renewed and there was a massive line there. And I was fine with the massive line, but I know that if there were other contributing factors, that would have been annoying to me, but I wasn't annoyed. Now I've just come out of I'm still doing it now, but I'm doing 2 45-minute workouts a day at the moment with this thing I'm doing, and I'm very much in the flow. And it didn't bother me as much as it normally would. I also was prepared. I thought there might be a line, so I'll bring a book, and I got something done. So I felt like a sense of achievement, I guess, I got something done by having to wait in the line. I was able to read the book that I needed to read. Anyway, that's irrelevant to the point. The point is that pre-existing situations affect how we respond to those little situations. So stress is gonna give us qi stagnation, but then what amount or how long do we have to experience that stagnation before symptoms actually happen? So if we know that stress causes that qi stagnation, then we want to be in the regularity of doing things that are going, in the regular habit of doing things that are going to stop or keep things moving, keep things in the flow. And that's what those things do that I told you to do for stress. That's why they work for stress, because in Chinese medicine, stress is stuck qi or blocked qi or liver qi stagnation. So here's a pattern of disharmony if you're into TCM, or you've gone to a chi stagnation practitioner, if you've gone to an acupuncture practitioner, a common diagnosis that they'll give you is liver chi stagnation. And when I first started doing Chinese medicine, I was practicing just purely TCM, like traditional Chinese medicine. I could do more classical Chinese medicine now, so I don't really use those diagnoses anymore. But that same idea of stuck energy and stagnant energy, I used to think, wow, am I doing this wrong? Because it seems like every person has liver chi stagnation. But it is actually the problem of our society. Like, society causes it because we're sitting all day. Like, I'm sitting right now. And it's more the abnormal thing to do a lot of physical exercise. Whereas in the past, society was like, well, you were lucky if you got a desk job. They probably didn't have that term desk jobs. Most people had to work for a living. Like, that's where we get that term. I had to work for a living. Like, well, I'm working for a living too. Like, ding. But I had to physically, manually labour myself to... And work, they would, in the Han Dynasty particularly, and like up to modern times now, more of the illnesses that are described were from people suffering with working their body down, like wearing it down, like overworking it, physically overworking it. Well, we don't have that issue so much in the West now. So chi stagnation is kind of just inevitably going to happen if you live in society now in 2022, 2023, coming up very soon, you're going to be predisposed to getting chi stagnation because you're sitting all the time, you're squashing this area of your body. Now, that's the second way that this stuff works, is it's promoting this movement. So side bending is actually really good for chi stagnation, right? Breathing is the second one. So when people have liver chi stagnation, one of the symptoms that they get can be hypochondrial pain or tightness here, and sighing. So their diaphragm gets tight and they get this pressing up into their chest, and they get this feeling, this need of, I want to release that and I want to get that moving. And that's what sighing is. Sometimes it's noticeable what people are sighing about. So if they're very stressed, they may sigh about the things they're stressed about. So I've even had patients where I've even said to them, do you sigh? And I've even had one person that went like this, not really. And that's literally what they did. The other thing I just did then with that laughing in my voice, now that's just how I'm just a happy person, and I can't help it. If I think about the word laughing, I start laughing. That is a chi stagnation releasing thing as well. So I'm not saying you can't release stagnation if you're not happy, but laughing does release it, and it does help you. If you can laugh about things, if you're a happy-go-luckier person, literally that's what that means. You're in the flow, you're not taking things too seriously, you're able to laugh about yourself. Now that I get that that's a personality trait for many people, but that kind of a thing is going to predispose those people to probably face more stressful situations and not find as much detriment from it. That personality trait, that ability to kind of, flexibility, easy come, easy go, not be too attached to things, that ability to let go, that's another part of it. But also that, like, I can just laugh about, I can see the funny side of things. So they're things. Now, I didn't mention this in the other one, but laughing is definitely one of the things that releases stress and releases chi stagnation, because of the diaphragm movement of when you have a really good laugh, it releases chi, it releases air. Now, that's what chi is. Chi is air, right? When I'm going, I'm breathing out chi, and when I breathe in, I'm breathing in chi, and then my body's metabolizing that air and making use of the parts that it needs to, the oxygen, and it's breathing out the stuff that doesn't need. So that ability to move that, is all related to this upper part in your chest area. And that's why I said when you're doing the exercises, like anything that you're doing that's going to stretch this area out, open this up, is really good. So these kind of things where you're just doing this, even just sit there and do that now and give that a try. Just get your arms from here to here and just do a few of those. Very good. So that brings me to another point that would be useful, is dancing. Now, I'm not a big fan of dancing because I'm terrible at dancing, as I just demonstrated there. That, like Elaine from Seinfeld, like with the dance, not as bad as that, but almost as bad as that. But that kind of thing, like being free, being able to moving your body physically is needed to do that. So however that works for you and however that feels good for you within the constraints of what's going on for you with your health problems or your fitness level, that's what I'd recommend you kind of work something out and find something that works for you to do that. And then creativity. So why does creativity help chi stagnation? So it's the wood element is related to the liver and the gallbladder, and the wood is related to spring, doing new things. So creativity is giving birth to a new thing, right? This idea, a thought is kind of, there's nothing happened yet, but then as it's kind of happening, it's kind of bringing forth that idea. It's actually, oh wow, something I thought of has actually come to pass. And like all of the resources of the five elements contained in our body, so things like your willpower and joy and like your cognition and all those things are needed to, let's say, bring forth an idea. But the very initial thing of like doing that relates to wood. Now, wood also relates to life planning and the ability to see in the future and feel that there is a future for you. Your ability to feel, okay, I'm going somewhere in my life, I've got somewhere to go, or there's something important for me to do even, is kind of a part of that. So it's actually also normal as life goes on for things around us change, so therefore our body's going to change and our mental state is going to change because of that. So if you're going through a phase like or a stage of life where you think, I used to know what I really wanted, but now I'm not so sure, it doesn't mean that that's always going to be the way. And sometimes you go through that and then that makes you then realise, okay, this is what I really want. Now, I did make some videos on planning and stuff like that and decision making in a Chinese medicine way. I actually did make some videos on that a while back, so you could go back and look at those things. And that was more about goal setting for the new year. In one of the new years I did something like that. So the five elements is like wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Now they go in a sequence that's called the generating sequence or generating cycle. And wood gives birth to fire, which is the motivation and the movement for the cognition. Your cognition is your thinking, your alertness, your ability to rest and then fall asleep, and also your ability to think and be, present in the moment. All your emotions in one way, thinking of like that as a blanket thing, is part of the fire element. These are all fire things, but fire needs wood on it fire has to be supported by the wood, right? It has to have something to burn, or else it's just nothing. So we also wood, you put wood on the fire to increase it. So a few things to think about, and it's getting a little bit more technical here, but when we think we're going to keep this to stress, if wood is too dry, the quicker it's going to snap, right? And the less flexible it's going to be. That's the best way to think about wood. So before you have wood, and the second one before fire is water. So water is supposed to nourish wood. And I've got these little plants here in front of me here, so you can see this. So this is how wood would be represented in Chinese medicine, as green, not as old dry sticks, red, brown, or brown sticks that are kind of snapping that you would put on the fire. But it's generating the ability to create the fire. Chinese medicine is very analogous, so it's kind of has that analogy to it. But you as a wood, like your wood element, is more better to think about this, right? To think about, I'm a plant. The wood is, my ability to kind of grow and thrive, and like the heat of the day, the sun, is the fire element, is that kind of ability to grow. And your ability to grow is also the water that nourishes it. So you can't have one or the other, one without the other. Too much water and no sun, it's not going to grow. Too much sun, and no water, it's going to shrivel up and just die. So you have that aspect of things going on. Now, if you don't have water nourishing wood, a person's wood generally gets not bending and flexing, but bending and snapping. And that's when they can become snappy. Like I've mentioned this before in my videos, the snappy Tom.
The cats of Australia have made their choice.
Right, we used to have a cartoon in Australia called Snappy Tom. The cats of Australia.
Snappy Tom.
The cat's choice.
Snappy Tom.
Me and my sister used to always joke about that, and she'd get very upset sometimes when I'd say that. Like you're getting into a little argument, you'd just be like, the cats of Australia have made their choice. Like you're getting to be a snappy Tom. That's what you'd have to be as old as me and an Australian to understand that joke. Anyway, it's going to be lost on all of the Americans watching this video. If you don't have that water nourishing wood, you can bend and snap and become agitated and very inflexible. Like inflexible, like when you see people and they're very rigid. No, this is the way. One of the little things I love watching because of the psychology of it and just because I'm interested in it is the hoarding show. There's this show called Hoarders, and there's a few different ones, like there's Only Human and stuff like that. They get psychologists to come into the show and help people with that. And you do see people in different states, right, like that. Like sometimes there was one that I watched last night which was about these people this lady was so rigid, like she couldn't be broken through to, and I don't know how they broke through to her, but in the end she was crying and she was all soft, like you could see her personality had completely changed, but she was so hardened, right? And you even see this in, like we use this in our language, like we say, oh, that person's very hard, they're hard to deal with, their heart's hardened, like they're hardened towards being open, they're not open, they're closed, right? And that's a characteristic that I think wood can get if it doesn't have water nourishing it. Now, water is the flow again, the softening, the ability of like creating that movement in your life. So, and also what water is for some people who are very, like this is also getting into the bit of the personality types. Water is stillness. So on one hand, I'm saying what's going to help you with stress is going to be moving and jumping up and down and whatever, like exercising and stuff. But stillness can also help us from that perspective. So if you're already moving a lot, you're already doing workouts a day and you're still not good, you're like, I'm still stressed and I'm doing 2 workouts a day, or I'm doing so much exercise. I'm not saying do more exercise.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
The answer might be a bit of stillness or some kind of stillness. Now, what are water activities that are stillness? So one is being around water. That's very peaceful, very helpful for some people. So looking at lakes, being around a stream. I mean, a very small way of doing that would be having a little water fountain around you. You might be whizzing to the toilet all the time with that, but something like that. Like having water near you can sometimes help people like that. If you have the choice to go for your exercise, your walk near a body of water or at the ocean, or go for a swim, that's good. Doing meditation, stopping and like learning how to do meditation, going to a float tank, although like it's pretty much the same thing, sensory deprivation kind of tank where you just in one of those pods for a while, in the Epsom salts pods. Acupuncture for some people can be that stillness. Right, they're lying down, they're doing nothing, and a lot of things are moving in their body and changing and stuff, but they're forced to lie down. I've had patients over the years tell me that, like, this is the only time I can actually relax at this level. Doesn't mean they can't relax any other time, but I've had people say to me, like, this is the ultimate relaxation I've ever experienced because I'm literally pinned down and I can't move and I can't go anywhere. And so whatever works for you, right? Whatever way works for you. So some people find a very similar benefit to acupuncture by lying down on a table of sorts, on a couch, and pretending visualizing having the acupuncture, like visualizing that feeling that you get when you when a practitioner's sticking those needles in you, that you get not necessarily the pain feeling, like, oh, that's hurting, but this feeling of like, oh, my limbs are heavy, And if you've had acupuncture enough times, it's easy to actually recreate that. And one of my teachers told me that when I was studying Chinese medicine, and I really didn't believe him at the time. I thought, oh, that sounds a bit strange. But it's true. Like, there's also research that supports, like, the research that supports the concept that when you visualize something, it's the same to a particular extent. It's the same as actually doing it. It's not the same, but can give similar, like, your body can actually respond physically. And let's not get into that now because the video might go on too long. But that's a part of it, right? So you might need some water to nourish your wood. You might need to get some movement in your life so that you can move things and the wood isn't so stuck and blocked. The next thing that's useful is that creativity. So making that time to be in the flow. And what that creativity does is it's stimulating your wood. It's using the wood, right? It's using that aspect that you might be suppressing in some way. Oh, I wish I could just get around to doing my painting or my art, but I just don't have time for it. Or I don't, if you're saying that to yourself, or you're hearing yourself saying that, I just don't have time for that. Well, you need to make time for that. Otherwise, something else is going to happen in your life and you'll be forced to make a change. I don't want to wish badness on you, but I'm saying, like, if you're hearing yourself saying, I don't have time for that, and you know that's something you really want to do, well, maybe you need to find a way of working that into your lifestyle. And it might not be in the same way that you've done it before. It might be in a different way. Like, let's say if I had kids, I'm sure I wouldn't have time to spend hours and hours doing those flowing art paintings. But I still get some benefit of doing art with kids. I'm sure I would, because I do art with my nephew. Now, it's not the same thing, because I do enjoy it when I get to just do it by myself as well. But I'm still doing the painting, and that would kill two birds with one stone in a way. Not that my nephew's a bird to be killed, but, like, what I'm getting at is, like, I've found a benefit in myself. Oh, I'm still getting this benefit of doing this art, but I'm also looking after this kid at the same time. Yeah, I don't have any kids, so I don't know how else to use that analogy, but that's a common thing I know people struggle with. When they have kids, that takes up a huge amount of time. And you need to do activities that are in conjunction with them. But you also need to prioritise yourself. And I think a lot of people have a lot of time used by TV or streaming shows or whatever you're watching. Like, a lot of stuff is used up in that time. A lot of time is used up just doing that, and maybe not having the energy to do the other things that would be good for you. But if you did those other things that were good for you, you might have more energy. So there's the conundrum, there's the catch-22. Finally, what can help with stress and how that works is also acupuncture, Chinese herbs. There's a myriad of different ways that it can work on that. But obviously, if I'm identifying these patterns of disharmony, then there are ways of treating those patterns in Chinese medicine. Now, qi stagnation is one of the things that's the easiest thing to get a quicker result with acupuncture than many other things. Because what acupuncture simply does is get things moving. And even if you've got a deficiency condition, like there's not enough there, it can't put a substance in you. It can only get things moving towards the organs that, stimulate the organs that are making blood. It can't actually get in there and pump you full of more blood. So it's a longer process for a lot of other things, but with qi stagnation, it's much quicker to resolve that. And that's why many people feel a very good feeling after acupuncture. They feel relieved, they feel lighter, they feel zoned out. Oh, I feel pleasant. Like, just that feeling, right? That in itself is telling you that that's moved the qi, because that's a very similar feeling people get to doing exercise or some of these other pleasurable things. But it's also in a different way. So it's not going to be, you're not going to feel the same exact thing that you feel from exercise when you have acupuncture, but it will be kind of have that a similar, it will have some correlation, some similarities there. Obviously, it depends on what's going on with you. There's many different styles of acupuncture, so please be in consultation with your own practitioner about, you know, what to expect and all that kind of stuff in that way. So I hope this has been useful and helpful to you. What we've covered today is part 2 of the first one, which tells you about those specific things you can do for stress. I want to make this video coming up to Christmas because I know this is a time where stress cumulatively builds. So you need these outlets, you need these things to be doing them on the regular so that it prevents the stress from coming up. The other thing you can try is, as you know stress is coming, you're coming towards a stressful thing or a busy time, and you know that busyness might lead you to stress. Now, why does busyness lead you to stress? Because your time that you'd normally use to do these other things is kind of constrained. Like, you might not have time to do all the things that you know would help you, and it might be a struggle to find that time. So that's a mindset thing to work out. How am I going to work this out, and what's important to me? And if you know those things are important to you, you just have to make time to do them. It becomes a prioritization thing, and you'll just find a way. If you've got that mindset about it and you're like, I need to do my exercise no matter what, you will find a way to do that. But there are things you can also do to plan yourself around the stressful time so that you mitigate the difficulties of that. One of those things would be meal prepping, because that's something I find that goes right out the window when there's big stresses on. Busyness, you don't have time to cook, and then you just reach for something quick and easy. And if that's a habit that you're in, and the quick and easy might be a frozen meal that you've made in the past, that's in the freezer, that's so much better than quick and easy Uber Eats, quick and easy McDonald's, quick and easy some kind of takeaway or whatever, right? So try to remember that, and don't feel bad that, I'm not cooking from scratch. If you've made that food in the past and you've frozen it, that's so much better. You know what's in there, right? Obviously, you're not freezing McDonald's burgers in your freezer. You're making your own meals from scratch. So that would be the best advice I could give you, is to plan things, and don't be too hard on yourself in some areas, so that you can have that, allows you to have that flexibility. And then you're not getting that stress from that internal pressure of, I've got to do this, I've got to do that to be a good person, or to be who I am, or whatever it is. So, planning around that time. I hope this is useful and helpful to you. And if it has, leave a comment below, let me know in the comments, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again on another video soon. Thanks for your interest in Chinese medicine.